Just make sure we're recording.
Ready to start?
Dave, I think Dave is, Dave, could you just give a thumbs up if you're recording?
Yep, we are recording.
All right, now just, I mean, I have a big mouth, I'm loud. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
Wow. Okay, so if you shout, you can be heard. So when you go around the room and introduce yourself, please don't worry about being extremely loud.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. This is Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, MPO Technical Advisory Committee meeting. It's February 15th, 9:33 a.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'm Bruce Thomas from Hooksett, and this is, and speak loudly, please.
Linda Coonhart, Francistown.
Andrew Haddock, Town of Chester.
Lucy St. John, New Hampshire DOT.
Tracy Whitehead, MTA CART.
Benjamin Herbert, Regional Mobility Manager.
Suzanne Neighbor, staff of the commission.
Nate Miller, staff.
Kristen Clark, City of Manchester.
Brendan McDowell, City of Manchester.
Adam Lasney, staff with the commission.
And Sylvia.
Sylvia Von Alec, with the commission. Was everyone able to hear all the folks that went around the room? Oh, great, thumbs up, thank you. We're having a little audio, visual, micro, everything issue.
We have a quorum.
We do.
We have a quorum.
With Kristen, that's 8.
We have a quorum.
Wow, all right, and we want to have the folks online introduce themselves.
Oh, yeah, everybody online, please introduce yourself. Vanessa,
Vanessa Partington, Grants Coordinator at Department of Environmental Services. Good morning.
Good morning.
morning, Dave,
David Tilden, Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission staff.
Franny,
Good morning, representing Greater Derry Londonderry Chamber of Commerce.
Mark. Mark.
There you go. Yeah,
Soonen,
that's, yep. Mark Soonen, Town of New Boston.
George,
Yep, George Sears, Town of Derry Planning.
Becky,
Becky Hebert, Town of Bedford. I also wanted to introduce Lucia Amaya. Lucia, turn off your mic and say hi. Lucia is our new land use and development planner, and she started the beginning of January. So we're going to be incorporating her work with Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission moving forward.
all right, welcome Lucia.
Hi. Thank you.
And-
Good morning, everyone.
And Craig,
Hi, everyone. This is Craig Tufts from Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission.
Zach,
Good morning, everyone. Zach Swick with the commission.
David, well, I guess we met you already. Mike Zagian, Bazagian. Okay.
Mike, I believe, is with the Town of Londonderry.
Okay. Anyway, first order of business is a review of the minutes from January 18, 2024. Has everybody had a chance to review them, and do we have a motion to approve them? All in
Chairman,
favor?
I'll make a motion. Nope, I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, or I hope someone did. Sorry, it's George from Derry.
Yeah, someone already did,
Oh,
George, so
oh,
we'll just
nope.
take a vote.
No problem.
Is that it? All in favor of that? All in favor?
All in favor of the minutes.
Anybody opposed? All right. They're approved. First item of new business, the tip amendment number 4 by Nate Miller of the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission.
You're situated in the right spot, Bruce. If you'd like to give this presentation, you're welcome to do so. All right, good morning, everyone. Hopefully everybody can hear me all right. I'm going to share my screen. Go into full screen mode. And then duplicate. I think everybody should be able to see it in full screen mode online. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
All right, excellent. So let's dive in without any further ado. I'm going to give an overview over the next few minutes of draft tip amendment number 4. Just a couple of months ago, we finished tip amendment number 3, but no rest for us. We're right into tip amendment number 4 already. I show this slide with every tip amendment presentation. You're all tired of seeing it probably, but it shows the process when we talk about these different plans that we're involved with at the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. There is a flow to how projects make their way to construction. So in the long term, we have projects programmed in our metropolitan plan, which we call our long range plan. Those projects advance into the 10-year plan. The 10-year plan is a state requirement. I think we're largely familiar with that. For those of you who have been on the TAC for a while, when it enters the 10-year plan, there is a funding commitment for that project. That's the point where there's a state level funding commitment to bring that project to construction. What we're talking about today is the TIP. The TIP are the first 4 years essentially of the 10-year plan. And these are the projects that are closest to construction, may already be in construction, and the TIP is a federal requirement. So anytime there's federal funds being spent on a project, it needs to be programmed in a TIP. So today we're talking about TIP amendment number 4. So the projects we're talking about today are things that are either going to be starting within the period from now till 2026, or they're already happening and are being amended in some way. So what we'll talk about today are a series of project additions, a couple of project removals, some timing adjustments, and some funding adjustments. And I'll walk through each of those in a moment. We did release tip amendment number 4 this Monday, so a few days ago. February 12th for a 10-day public comment period. That public comment period will run until Friday, February 23rd. We did include a copy of the tip amendment in all of your packets. You can also find it on the front page of our website at snhpc.org. We will have a public hearing. Our MPO will have a public hearing to consider adoption of the tip on February 27th, which is their next regularly scheduled meeting. That's 11:30 a.m. if you're curious. So what projects are in the tip? Well, there are a series of the non-EV CMAQ projects that were added by Gassett and retained by the governor in his version of the 10-year plan that are being added into the tip as part of this amendment. The first is in the town of Bedford. It's the construction of approximately 3,800 feet of curb sidewalk on Old Bedford Road. This was one of those non-EV related CMAQ projects. It is being added to the tip as a new project. The earliest that funding comes available for any of the CMAQ projects is the beginning of fiscal year 2025. And so the Bedford project has engineering phase work beginning in fiscal 25 accordingly. The return of a project that many of you will be familiar with. This is Dairy Londonderry 13065. This is 13065 is a very old project number. So this was the original umbrella project for the Exit 4A project. It had been in a number of tips over the years. It is not in the current tip because many of there are a series of what are called child projects now, and I'll show what those are on this slide. So there's a 13065A project, a 13065B. The A project is currently under construction. That's the interchange itself and the beginning of the connector road. And then it works its way ultimately towards Shenetto Road in the C project. So it's a big project, Exit 4A, and it's complicated from an administrative perspective. Over time, the 13065 project went away. And most of pretty much all of the construction funding was programmed in these child projects, the A project, the B project, the C project, etc. Due to some Federal Highway Administration guidance given to DOT, the right-of-way phase funding for all of those child projects needs to continue to come through the 13065 project. I'm not going to wax poetic about the reasons behind that, but for a variety, the interpretation of Federal Highway is that the 13065 project needs to exist for right-of-way purposes for those child projects. So we're adding the 13065 project back into the TIP with right-of-way funding for fiscal 24 through 26. That right-of-way funding will support the future child projects along the corridor. For whatever reason, the right-of-way funding needs to be in that 13065 umbrella project. Londonderry 44361. This is the construction of phase 7, the final phase of the Londonderry Rail Trail connecting to the Derrytown line. This was another of the non-EV CMAQ projects that is being added into the TIP. So just like Bedford, this project will be added into the TIP with engineering phase work to commence in fiscal 25. Londonderry Wyndham Seabrook. This is a statewide CMAQ application, another of the non-EV CMAQ projects. This is an application from the DOT's Bureau of Traffic. They'll be doing some signal coordination and optimization work on those 3 corridors, 102 in Londonderry, 111 in Windham, and US Route 1 in Seabrook. This will be added to the TIP as a new CMAQ project with engineering work beginning in fiscal 25. A CMAQ project from a couple of cycles ago, the construction of a roundabout at the entrance of Derryfield School at River Road and Bicentennial Drive. The construction of that project is being moved beyond fiscal year 2026. The reason for that is, and Kristen may be able to provide more information about this, but the original sponsor of that project was the Derryfield School itself. And the school has requested that the city of Manchester take the role of project sponsor. So there will be an agreement, a local project agreement between the city and DOT, which I understand is currently under development. And that is what is affecting that change of project sponsor is what's affecting the timeline of that project. Manchester 44352. This is another new CMAQ project. This is a bigger CMAQ project in terms of scope. It's got a series of improvements on Mammoth Road, including some signal improvements, some intersection improvements, some sidewalk improvements, a lot of different elements of work happening in that project. This is being added to the TIP as well as a new project. They have engineering phase work program to begin in fiscal 26 for this project, Kristen.
How did they choose which CMAQ project to be 25?
That's an excellent question. I think they just did it based on fiscal constraint. My understanding is they haven't discussed schedule with any of the individual project sponsors at this point. And these CMAQ projects will always be adjusted in future amendments based on readiness and when each of the projects moves from engineering to right of way and construction. So my understanding is their initial programming of the funds is just simply based on fiscal constraint. They can only program a certain amount of CMAQ funds per year in fiscal 25 and 26 and the like, and that they've done that accordingly here. And it just so happens that Manchester's first year of engineering is programmed for 26 for that reason. A statewide program for complex bridge inspections. This is what are complex bridges, suspension bridges, cable stayed bridges, and other bridges with unusual circumstances. These are the most kind of complex bridges in the state. And so they do get inspected regularly as any other bridges do. the inspections are more intense and require more elements than other bridge structures do. So DOT is adding supplemental funding for this complex, the statewide complex bridge inspection program for the next 3 years to meet their anticipated expenses in that program. There is a program called MOBR, Municipal Owned Bridge Rehabilitation and Replacement Projects. It is being removed from the TIP. This is a procedural step. The MOBR program will continue to exist. All of the projects around the state funded with MOBR funds are going to continue with no change. We just can't list it as a programmatic project anymore. It's all of the individually funded MOBR projects will be listed individually in the TIP in the future. That is, my understanding is that's because this program funds both rehabilitation and replacement projects. In the eyes of the federal government, those are two different types of projects. You can't lump them together in a single programmatic listing. So the way to address that is simply to list all of those projects individually, and that's what's going to be done moving forward. Wilton, Milford, Amherst, Bedford. This is the 13692E project, which is one of the child projects for safety improvements on the 101 corridor. This project we are taking out of our TIP. The E project, the scope of the E project is entirely within the town of Amherst and is not going to be in the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission region. As a result, there's no reason for us to carry that project in our TIP. It's all going to this particular, the E project will all be in the Nashua region. So we're going to take this out. Nashua will continue to carry it in their TIP, simply because we know that the actual work that will be done as part of this E project will be within the town of Amherst only. And then lastly, the town of Windham, the intersection improvements at 28 and Ralston Road. This is a project that we at Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission put into the 10-year plan 4 cycles ago now. It's making its way through the engineering phase work. The construction is being pushed a year back. So I think it was originally scheduled for construction in 26 within the TIP period. I believe that's being delayed 1 year to 27, which pushes construction beyond the TIP period. So construction funding being removed here. The reason for that is that more time is needed for project development due to constrained staff resources. And that's it. That is TIP amendment number 4 in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about the TIP amendment. And again, our public hearing will be February 27th, Tuesday, February 27th at 11:30 in this room. Any questions?
No questions? All right.
All right. Well, we would certainly welcome, with a quorum in the room, we would welcome a recommendation from the TAC that the MPO adopt TIP amendment number 4. If you're so inclined to do that.
I move that we recommend to the MPO.
All right, and a second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
They want to repeat so that people in the audience, virtual audience, can hear that.
So we want to have a vote to approve TIF amendment number 4. And I have a motion and a second. So all approve, like to vote to approve TIF amendment number 4.
And recommend to the Southern New Hampshire, to the MPO.
What?
Recommend adoption to the MPO.
And recommend adoption to the MPO. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Next on the agenda, climate pollution reduction planning grants by Suzanne Ninnebar, Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, I'm gonna share the screen. Let me make sure I have the right thing pulled up first. There we go. There we go. Okay. Dave, can you let me know if you're able to see this in full screen?
It is, yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm really excited today to share a little bit of background on the EPA's climate pollution reduction grants. You might have been seeing some details in recent newsletters or social media from SNHPC about, hey, if you're interested, get involved in these upcoming climate conversations that are happening this winter. This presentation is here to give you some background on what is that all about and really understand some really exciting climate action planning work that's happening right now. So in terms of our agenda, I'm going to give you some background on this process as a whole. I'm going to talk about 2 parallel initiatives that are happening in New Hampshire as well as in Greater Boston. And then I'll give you a little bit of a preview about some implementation grant work that is underway. First of all, let me just give me one moment to try to hide the, I'm going to hide this so it's not in my way. Hide floating meeting controls. There we go. Okay, so the EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. This is $5 billion from the Inflation Reduction Act to fund innovative projects that tackle climate pollution. Sounds very inspiring. What it means from a practical standpoint, when you hear CPRG anywhere, we're talking about climate action plans, whether it's the development of or implementation of climate action plans. Right now, nearly every state in the country, all of the largest MSAs in the country and tribal territories have received non-competitive planning grants to develop or update their climate action plans. So that's what's happening all across the country right now.
Suzanne, MSA, we have some new people.
Oh, of
so
course.
MSA.
Metropolitan Statistical Area. So the largest kind of metropolitan areas in the country also have received money to do these planning grants for climate action.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me click ahead. Okay, and I think it's really helpful from our standpoint at SNHPC to think about how this fits into our broader work around climate planning. You may have heard me talk before about how as we strive to build a more resilient region, we want to think about both climate mitigation, which means reducing the greenhouse gas emissions that are contributing to climate change. And we also want to think about adaptation. How do we manage our risks? How do we start to build infrastructure to meet the needs of the future that's being created under climate change projections? So the roadway adaptation toolkit that you've seen presentations about recently, that really covers the adaptation side. When you hear about CPRG, climate pollution reduction grants, that's specifically addressing the mitigation side. How are we reducing greenhouse gas emissions? There are 3 broad objectives for CPRG. Number 1, of course, is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and also think about it in terms of economic implications. You know, how are we creating good jobs? How are we lowering energy costs for families? Number 2, we want to empower community-driven solutions. And this really has a very strong equity lens. You'll see a lot of language when you read through this material about addressing the needs of disadvantaged communities. CPRG also falls under the kind of Justice 40 initiative that the federal government has to really drive public benefit toward disadvantaged communities that have experienced the worst impacts of pollution and climate change. And then the third one is to reduce harmful air pollution. I really see a public health lens happening here, right? What are the public health impacts of living in places where there's high levels of air pollution? So big picture overview of the process. Right now, the thing that everyone is scrambling to do is to complete their priority climate action plans. So if you see the word PCAP, that means the priority climate action plan. This is happening very quickly. Basically, everybody kind of got their funding streams and their sub-awardees and everything lined up at the end of 2023. And these PCAPs are due to EPA on March 1st. So coming up really, really quickly. They're focused on near-term implementation-ready measures. And when you see the word measures, I think of it as strategy, right? Like it might make more sense to you if you kind of think about strategies. When I see measures, I think of metrics. When you hear about it in this context, measures means greenhouse gas reduction strategies. This is really important to complete these PCAPs because they are a prerequisite for submitting an implementation grant. Anything you want to submit to apply for in terms of implementation grants needs to exist in the PCAP. So this is a really important work that's happening very quickly. It's kind of like you're laying down track for the train as you're driving it. A lot of people are working really hard to get these PCAPs out the door. Implementation grants are due just 1 month later on April 1st. And that will have $4.3 billion to actually support the implementation of the PCAPs. And then we can kind of breathe a little bit and take some time to think about completing the comprehensive climate action plan. So the CCAPs are due in August of 2025. They should focus on all sectors, right? I think a lot of the PCAPs are really focused on the highest emitting sectors. So you're talking about transportation, buildings, and energy sectors. CCAP, I think, will have a broader lens, be much more comprehensive, incorporate things like natural landscapes and agriculture and waste management. These are going to have near and long-term emissions reduction goals. And then a couple years after they're submitted, there will be a kind of status update due. So I wanted to let you all know that SNHPC is actually involved in 2 parallel processes. We are not leading any of this work that I'm describing. So I know we have Vanessa on the line from DES. Feel free to correct me if I get anything off the mark. But we are playing kind of a coordinating role to help facilitate these processes. Of course, everybody has heard about the work that's going on in New Hampshire, really focused on updating New Hampshire's climate action plan, and DES is leading that work right now. We are also involved with work with MAPC, and this is the Metropolitan Area Planning Council for the Greater Boston area, and they are taking the lead on updating the Greater Boston Climate Action Plan. I'm going to talk about both of these initiatives because we're very closely involved with both. I'm actually going to start with Greater Boston because we have a small sub-award under this grant. Just given how they're running their process, they were able to give us some money. They're really heavily reliant on regional planning commissions and the expertise and community outreach that regional planning commissions have. And with that money, we've also been able to use that to help do some coordination work with New Hampshire as well. So for the Boston MSA, this is covering 2 states, 7 regional planning commissions, 167 municipalities. And out of those 167, 4 of them are SNHPC communities. So Chester, Derry, Londonderry, and Wyndham have probably heard from me specifically about getting involved in the Greater Boston Climate Action Plan. So we're small but mighty. We're influential, even though we're just 4 out of the 167. Here are the 7 different regional planning commissions or regional planning associations involved in the CAP steering committee. We are the steering committee that's guiding this work for MAPC. And they have other threads of engagement for this work as well. There's a municipal advisory group with staff and representatives from 30 different municipalities across this region. Jeff Moulton from the town of Derry has stepped up to kind of be our representative from the SNHPC region. There's a Justice 40 advisory group that's meeting periodically. And these are nonprofit and community-based organizations that are weighing in on the PCAP right now. And 2 organizations that are representative of New Hampshire interests include the Granite State Organizing Project and the Conservation Law Foundation. They're hosting listening sessions and focus groups, as well as some digital engagement methods. So there's a variety of different ways they're tackling this. I'm not going to go through it's a very systematic kind of process that they've spelled out for how they're developing the Greater Boston PCAP, Priority Climate Action Plan. But the thing I want to highlight for you the most is that there's actually a number of fairly recent climate action plans in the Greater Boston MSA. So they're actually saying, how do we leapfrog on what already exists? Let's build on what's already there. So they started with those 25 climate action plans and all of the measures or strategies that are in there and did an analysis of that as a starting point for building this. So from that work, they developed 70 draft measures. They're getting community input. They're getting advisory group feedback. They're really thinking about what's best suited to that implementation grant funding. And then we're still going through that process, even as we speak, as we head on into the March 1st deadline. They have done a really vigorous prioritization matrix to figure out what's going to be best suited to the PCAP. And we're anticipating about 10 to 15 final strategies in the PCAP. This is a high-level overview of my understanding of the current draft. We have a steering committee meeting that's happening tomorrow. I wasn't able to get a sneak preview of where they are right now, but I wanted to highlight a few of the major themes that I'm aware of in the Greater Boston PCAP right now. So again, they're focused specifically on the highest emitting greenhouse gas sectors, so transportation, buildings, and energy. And then also looking at workforce as a kind of enabling need that we must be addressing if we're going to implement these things. So under transportation, there are measures or strategies around transit, around expansion of multimodal networks, a focus on EV charging and consumer incentives to encourage folks to invest in EV, electric vehicles. Under buildings, there's the topic of weatherization, energy efficiency, decarbonization, like a lot of words about like, how do we make our buildings more energy efficient? How do we take advantage of renewable energy sources? And then a lot of different approaches for thinking about that. You know, people are looking for funding and financing programs, technical assistance programs. There's an inclination to focus on multifamily and affordable housing, as well as municipal buildings and schools. From a new construction standpoint, it's like we need to update energy codes and make sure new construction has a higher standard than what we've seen in the past. And then for rental buildings, looking at mandating energy disclosures. So rental buildings have to be upfront about, you know, how energy efficient they are. On the energy sector, there's some exciting discussion around renewable energy projects and the things that are actually relatively new to my understanding. You know, we're all familiar with solar, but I think that like Greater Boston is really interested in looking at networked geothermal heating and cooling, looking at the district level. This often happens on college campuses or hospital campuses where you actually kind of can run piping throughout the whole district, a whole network of buildings, and that's handling all of the heating and cooling. They're also looking at municipal aggregation, where municipalities purchase electricity in bulk and can kind of defray some of the costs for residents. And then from a workforce standpoint, there's looking at municipal staff capacity and how that will really need to be increased if we're going to implement all of these things. Making sure that there's an emphasis on hiring local and hiring minority and women-owned businesses. And then there's this idea of having a contractor academy that's targeting traditionally underrepresented groups. So lots of different ideas were at the table. This is what I'm seeing surfacing and kind of coming up higher in the ranks right now. We'll know more in the next couple of days, probably, about what makes the final cut. Okay, then moving on to New Hampshire's climate action plan. This is actually a title slide from an event that we had last, 2 weeks ago now. February, time is flying. We're really moving through February. On February 1st, and the evening at the Sea Science Center, New Hampshire DES and New Hampshire Listens hosted a community-focused conversation here in the greater Manchester area. And SNHPC was able to support that. We helped secure the Sea Science Center and really, you know, did some outreach to recruit a lot of really great people to the table. It was a super fun night. The emphasis on and process and how DES has been pursuing this work is very, very heavily focused on community outreach and stakeholder conversations and kind of maximizing engagement. So New Hampshire Listens is based out of UNH, and they're a group that is very focused on public engagement and having kind of making that a meaningful process. And so they've been facilitating a wide array of conversations all over the state. The ones you see in blue were in-person sessions. So those happened, you know, this is, like I said, this has all been happening very quickly in January and February. There were also online conversations and cross-sector stakeholder meetings that happened through virtual participation as well. So with all of that, I think I have some pictures from Manchester the other week. It was super fun. Like we had about 25 people in the room. Everyone was highly engaged. We talked about like kind of different sectors and priorities and who needed to be involved and what were the challenges that we might face with developing different implementation measures. But so you can imagine this happening times, you know, dozens and dozens of other opportunities. And then I think DES is really kind of shaking out, well, what is going to be most viable to put in the PCAP and really make sure that this is going to be moving forward for an implementation grant. So as you can see here, I just used the kind of same format, but there's slightly different focuses for New Hampshire. EV charging is still there, EV consumer incentives are still there, the public transit is still there. So I would say the transportation priorities are pretty well aligned with what we saw with the Greater Boston plan. From a building standpoint, there's a very much an emphasis on focusing on residential buildings needs and the needs of residential building owners. So one topic that really came up is pre-weatherization, right? Sometimes you want to enhance your weatherization, your building envelope. You want to enhance your heating and cooling or systems upgrades. But a lot of buildings actually need some structural improvements, or they might need some health-based improvements, like a lead paint removal, before they're even eligible for other programs related to weatherization. So really thinking through what do you need up front? And that's a important kind of equity consideration from a residential building standpoint. And heat pumps, incentivizing energy efficient heat pumps is a priority measure or priority strategy that's really coming up high on the building side of things. And then the workforce development is also very similar to what we saw with Greater Boston, really thinking about how to target low income and disadvantaged groups as we create a robust workforce to implement these measures. So that's where we are in terms of where the PCAPs live right now. DES is accepting written public comments on those draft measures until 4 p.m. on February 20th. So you can send an email to cprg@des.nh.gov. There's an extensive website here, but the easiest thing is just to Google DES CPRG public comment, right? And that's a great way to be able to see the document currently and weigh in with other ideas or feedback you might have on those measures.
Can we go back a slide?
Yeah.
Just a question, I don't know if Suzanne, you can answer this, or DES. On the transportation side, I'm curious that we're not seeing anything about, complete streets sort of support or walkability or multimodal, anything like that. And I'm wondering if that's just a thought or not a thought, or, yeah. And what also does it mean? What are the consumer incentives? I mean, if they're paying me to get an electric vehicle, that's fun. I mean, what does that?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, I think that a lot of that's still information. And I have one more slide to go through, and then maybe we'll close out the slide deck. And I want to defer to Vanessa to jump in if there's any kind of DES messaging on this that I might not be able to get right. So the last thing I want to share is that the PCAP is going to funnel right into developing implementation grants. I will admit I have not read the NOFO cover to cover. It is lengthy and complicated, but I have sat in on a webinar about like what's going on in the NOFO and some key takeaways that I've heard. Number one, that what's going to be most successful is showing that you're going to have significant greenhouse gas reductions by 2030. So we want things that are going to make an impact really quickly on reducing emissions. Number two, the focus needs to be on low income and disadvantaged communities. It represents a significant portion of the kind of scoring criteria, so it needs to be a part of those implementation grants. They're looking for ideas that are innovative, that are replicable, that are scalable. The measures must be in a PCAP, right? And must be in the PCAP to be eligible for an implementation grant. And coalitions are very strongly encouraged. Explicitly, when I was on a call with MAPC a few weeks ago, they said they had been on an FAQ meeting and discussion, and it was relayed to them from EPA that individual municipalities are unlikely to be successful. They want to see coalitions working together. They want to see things happening at scale. So with that, that's basically the conclusion of my presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. Give me just a second. How do I make it come back? I see. Thank you. I'm in the wrong field of Zoom. There we go. Stop share. Okay. Yeah, so with that in mind, I think Sylvia, to go back to your question from about, what are the missed opportunities right now? Because we've had this conversation. I was in a conversation with MAPC recently where we brought up similar issues. Like, these transportation ideas are fantastic, but what if we're not doing anything from a land use management side to encourage, more multimodal transportation, right? Like, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of components that are on the table. In that conversation with the MAPC work group, what I heard was like, they're explicitly focused on narrowing the field for the PCAP because it is all about the implementation grant and having a strategy that they can justify as directly reducing greenhouse gas in the near future. And I think there's always opportunity to add more in the comprehensive climate action plan, but this is a really interesting moment of just being really decisive about what's going to be most likely to get funded and making sure that that's where people are focusing their priorities. I'm not sure if Vanessa's still with us. If you wanted to add in any thinking you're aware of on the DES side.
I think you explained it very well, Suzanne. Thank you. And thank you for the overview. I think that's a helpful way to break it down for folks. I don't have anything to add. I haven't been intimately working on that myself, but I think you captured it pretty well. And I hope that answers your question, Sylvia.
I think that the understanding is that there will be more time, the comprehensive climate action plans that we have, another year and a half to complete. We'll have a much more thorough attention to all of those aspects. But this is about like, what can people actually start to develop a proposal for now?
So the acronym's a little overwhelming.
I know it is.
But that's okay. But I need to go because the acronyms, I get lost.
Oh, I understand.
So I think I understand that measures and strategies are the same thing. And that right now we're talking about measures and strategies. So I get lost between what is an implementation if adaptation is not implementation. So my original understanding was you get the messages, you get your strategies and measures, which are measures, and then you have adaptation, which we're not talking about. So does that mean implementation money can't do anything to actually fix things so fixing things is when adaptation happens, right? Adaptation is when you fix the thing. You see, is the money just being spent on stuff when we never fix anything?
I hear what you're saying. Actually, if I might go back to sharing my screen for just a moment.
I just need to follow.
And pull up the slide again about that kind of shows the interconnection here. Let me go back to Zoom and share my screen. Okay. I think it's a great question, Linda. Trust me, I am learning as I'm going as well, right? Like this is a really complicated federal grant initiative, and I'm like doing my best to absorb from many different channels from like New Hampshire, and
I know it's not.
It's not easy. It's not easy. But I think the important thing to remember is that, yeah, you're correct. This is not adaptation funding. If you look at this, this is funding to support mitigation strategies, mitigation measures. So it can be things that it's basically, you need to show that you're reducing greenhouse gas emissions through the work you're doing.
So that's what confuses me. If we're making a plan that shows that we're going to do it, but then we can never afford to do it, I don't get it. Like I'm confused.
You're confused. So, but to fundamentally, the funding under CPRG will fund things like sustainable transportation or energy efficiency or clean energy or EV.
We can do those things, or we can just pretend.
If you get an implementation grant to implement, you can definitely do those things.
Implementation will implement some things, but
unfortunately, the blue side of
I'm
things.
just trying to figure out what things.
The blue side that's more like
things that might fix something can be funded versus things that would fix things but can't be funded.
Yeah,
I want that list. I would like that list, please.
Yeah, we'll talk it out. We'll work on it. But in terms of like the shorthand right now, if you're seeing it on the green side, that's the kind of stuff that the implementation grants will fund, and they will fund the development of those things, like the development of clean energy. It'll fund an expansion of public transit or whatever your priorities that you're implementing. If you get awarded, you will have money to implement those things.
Will they fund vehicle replacement for transit? Like if they're transit buses, they want to go to electric buses?
If that's written into an implementation grant.
If you can take that to any of your working groups, I would like a list of things that we presume are going to be fundable and things that we presume they won't ever give us money for. Because I think I see all these things that could help reduce carbon emissions.
Totally.
But there's some kind of line here, which
I know.
And it's hard.
And this is something we've talked about too.
Because it makes me insane because I would really like to push somebody that let us fund the things we could fix.
I know. And I would say that that's one of the outcomes that people are striving for with the comprehensive climate action plan. Like whenever there's a sense of frustration of like, well, why can't we do this? Or why can't this fit in right now? The assurance is when we have time to develop the comprehensive climate action plan, we're going to have all of these different ideas, and we're also going to broaden our range of like where we're looking for funding sources too, right? So maybe there are other elements and other federal funding tracks that are not just this one CPRG track that we can think more broadly about.
I didn't mean to be pushy. It's just
No,
like,
no.
I wish that somehow the higher ups that come up with this stuff could listen to us people that are dealing with fixing the things they tell us they want us to fix.
Mhm.
And let the money move to places where we see we could make a true difference.
Right.
Somehow they decide that our ideas aren't good, but they don't ever talk to us. Thank you.
Well, Linda, we'll try to get you involved as we move into the comprehensive climate action plan. If you have the bandwidth, I will definitely let you know where you can get more involved.
Good question. Any other questions? Anybody out there have any questions? All right, well, thank you. Next on the agenda, Transportation Outreach Initiatives with Ben Hebert, Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission.
Right. Can everybody see this in full screen online?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So good morning, everybody. As said, my name is Benjamin Herbert. I am the Regional Mobility Manager for Region 8, which is the greater Manchester, Derry, and Salem area. I'm just going to do a little quick, loose presentation on all the different transportation outreach initiatives happening throughout the region, not just by us, but by other organizations within the region. So first thing I want to highlight is that this past Friday was actually Winter Bike to Work Day. There were 83 granite staters that pledged to ride their bike to work that day. And within our region, riders pledged from Manchester, Bedford, Goffstown, Hooksett, and Windham. We had lots of organizations within the region also participate in Winter Bike to Work Day, such as MTA, who offered free rides to those traveling with their bikes, as well as the REI in Bedford, which provided free winter biking classes to the public. Touching on the different transportation resources, of course, we have our regional community transportation directory. And this is a constantly updated document highlighting all the transportation services available in the greater Manchester, Derry, Salem area. Just a quick sidebar, since this is work done by me, my region is slightly different than SNHPC's region, which is that I serve 13 out of the 14 municipalities in SNHPC, with Francistown being the exception. Then I also serve a handful of communities based in the Rockingham Planning Commission region, in the western portion of Rockingham County. Back to the directory, it's available online and it highlights 26 different services available throughout the region, while also touching base on every town and what services are available in that specific town. I also have various brochures that I'm always out distributing. We've had over 300 plus distributions of these brochures across 20 locations, most of which being in libraries, but also I've done these at various events such as Gasset hearings, as well as the Londonderry Senior Expo and the National Night Out down in Salem this past summer. And then the last thing I want to highlight are these little posters that I put together as well, which is a poster for each of the 20 towns within our within my region. This goes out to any town hall staff or organizations based within the region, and they can just hang it up in their office or in their community center. So it's easy for staff to use this as a reference for when their citizens reach out to them and ask for help finding transportation. And then the last thing I want to touch on here would be the outreach events that we do. And the most recent and significant one I wanted to highlight was a tour that we did of MTA's Green Dash. We did this in partnership with MTA, of course, and then a little cameo appearance from Tracy on the slide, who's in the room over there.
Get rid of that picture. You look great. Oh, I don't. No, I don't.
It was
at all.
It was a comfortable like 25 degrees that day. I think we were all looking great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we did this in partnership with MTA and worked with Victory Women of Vision, which is an organization based in Manchester. And what Victory Women of Vision is that they're a community organization providing resources and support to elderly migrant and immigrant women who are needing help sort of integrating within their new home. And then we had over a dozen participants in this event, and this all stems from a listening session we did in the summer of last year, where members of Victory Women of Vision were able to voice their experiences with aging in New Hampshire. And so one of the aspects we wanted to address was transportation, which is what led to this tour. And then that's not the end of it, because I'm actually going to be jumping around a bit, because there's also various stuff online that I want to show off as well. So hopefully this goes as smooth as I hope it does. Where is Chrome? Here it is. Get out of this. There we go. So the first thing I want to show off is a project that's been happening between the town of Goffstown, Goffstown Television, and MTA. MTA operates a free shuttle service within the town of Goffstown, providing rides to anybody with priorities given to those who are of older age and for rides to medical appointments. And Goffstown Television has been producing these cute little short informative videos on how to navigate and use the Goffstown shuttle. I just wanted to show an example of one of these on how to schedule a ride. If the sound doesn't work on Zoom, just go ahead and give me a shout and hopefully I can fix it.
If you're interested in scheduling a ride with the Goffstown shuttle, but you're not sure where to start, we've got you covered.
Dave, did you hear that?
Yes, we can hear it.
Okay.
Sweet.
Here, we will tell you everything you need to know to start scheduling your first ride today. General information regarding the service, including our phone number, hours of operation, and schedules, can be found on mtabus.org. Navigate to the Routes and Schedules tab at the top of the page and select Town of Goffstown from the dropdown. Here, you will find any information you may need. When calling by phone to schedule a ride, simply dial 603-434-3569. Choose your agency, which is Manchester Transit Authority. Our call center representative will ask first-time riders for some simple information, including your name, age, address, phone number, and any specific travel requests. We will also ask for any special mobility needs you may have so that we can accommodate accordingly. Lastly, during this call, you will also schedule your return ride. Reservation hours are 5:25 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 9:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays. Transportation is provided from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday through Friday. The last pickup window is from 1:15 p.m. to 1:45 p.m. Please keep in mind that the service is closed during certain holidays, which are listed on our website. Rides must be scheduled at least the business day prior to needing the ride, but no more than 1 week ahead. If your preferred time is unavailable, we will make every effort to work with you to create a suitable alternative. If something comes up and you need to cancel your ride, please call during regular business hours or at least 24 hours in advance of your scheduled time. Of course, we understand that cancellations can happen at any time. To cancel a Monday ride, please call by the preceding Friday or leave a message on our voicemail over the weekend. We are happy to help you get where you need to go and are here to assist you with any questions or concerns you may have. Don't hesitate to give us a call today.
I love that.
Well done.
You may not have noticed, but those were not real actors used in the video.
Feel a little lack of staff that day.
Yeah. Now, you might remember from previous TAC meeting, I think it was, where I kind of showed everybody the work that I had done on our website, updating the content related to transportation on our website. But there's other website work happening throughout the region that's not just us. For example, the town of Hooksett recently gave their website a whole new revamp, including updating all the information on transportation in their municipality. So not only do they touch on the Hooksett shuttle program provided by MTA, as well as one of MTA's bus lines that runs up to the Hooksett Walmart, but they also provide links to the New Hampshire rideshare program, as well as our website, and all the updated information we have on our website regarding transportation. And then the big thing I want to show is sort of the capstone project of this whole new mobility management network and program, which is Keep New Hampshire Moving. This is supposed to be a statewide one-stop shop for all transportation services available in the region. All New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont are the top 3 states in the country in terms of highest median age. And a particular prominent issue amongst those who are older age is finding transportation. Maine and Vermont have websites like these already, called Go Vermont and Go Maine respectively. I think they wanted to call this Go New Hampshire as well, but I think that name was taken by a firearm advocacy group already. So that's why we're here at Keep New Hampshire Moving. So just to kind of show, this is sort of like a peek behind the curtain thing, because this website isn't public yet. It's still kind of getting content added to it and some tweaks being made. But basically how this is meant to operate is if someone's needing help finding transportation, they would just go straight to this webpage and they would just click find transportation for me. And then they would just say, I live in, I don't know, let's say I live in Conway, and show me what's in Conway. And then it would tell them exactly where they live, what services are available. To stick with our region, maybe we'll go with, there's a New Boston. There it is. Show me what's in New Boston. You got the MTA New Boston shuttle. And there's still some kinks to work out with this. Obviously, the MTA logo is not that wide. So there's some, they got to do a little graphical stuff with it. But basically, someone could just click on this to learn more about it. And then it would tell them all things that they need to know, such as what advance notice they need to give, the cost of the service, when it's available, is there any sort of eligibility for using this service, as well as if it's wheelchair accessible, and then also provides contact information on how to reach out to them or just go straight to their website. And it's loading, so I'm not going to do that. And then to show a little other parts about this website. It kind of dives into the various ways to travel, such as the bus or the train, rideshare programs, volunteer driver programs, any sort of biking and walking services, ferry services. I think we talked about removing this. I don't know why this is there, unless there's a ferry service that I don't know about. Yeah, may want to have it. Maybe.
Yeah. I think somebody in Portsmouth just started a water taxi also.
They did. Yeah,
Okay,
from
then.
Portsmouth to Kittery, I believe.
Then you have to leave it.
Yeah, I guess we have to leave it. That's out of my control, but yeah. And then of course, paratransit and taxi services as well. And then you could just click on it to learn more about what these services mean. And then of course, information would be added there in the future. There's a finding a ride. I just showed this off. That's right. Future Forward just kind of talks about what the future of transportation looks like, sort of going green. So whether it's public transportation, biking, walking, carpooling, electric vehicles, or just working from home and telecommuting. Regions is supposed to be the page that's goes into all the regional coordinating councils that are within New Hampshire. And regional coordinating councils are made up of planning commission staff, municipalities, transportation providers, public organizations, and citizens, all working together to build this coordinated network of transportation services so everybody's in the know of what's going on and how we should operate efficiently to get people to where they need to go. And so you could scroll down and find ours, which is Southern New Hampshire, and it tells you information about the regional mobility manager there, what the region is, who they serve, what they do, and then other resources that are relevant to the region, whether it's our coordinated public transit plan, our RCC homepage, and then the planning commission's involved, as well as transportation resources such as the directory, the I Need a Ride service, and then various resources within our website as well regarding transportation. And then the New Hampshire Trip Planner is this software by Agile Mile. You might have seen this on Commute Smart, I believe, but all you'd have to do is just say, I need a single trip for shopping or go to the doctor. I need to go from Manchester. And let's say I got to go to Nashua, help me out. And then it tells you, There's 9 different transit routes you can take. There's 5 carpoolers that you could reach out to and can provide rides for you to get down there. There's a bike route that you can take. And then there's also a walk route if you want to walk from Manchester to Nashua. That would be your choice. I don't know if I would advocate for that necessarily, because that's a heck of a walk.
29 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you could do that in daylight. Yeah.
Walk really fast.
Yeah. But this is, I think, what the schedule with this website is, we're working to get all the content into this by the end of, was it the 15th? So next week, that's when we want to have all the content in on this. And then it's slated for a soft launch next month. By soft launch, it's not about, you know, getting the word out, check out this new fancy website. It's just putting it, making it public, and just letting people go in and toy around with it and see if they can break it. They can fix any bugs that come out. And before they decide to make this whole thing a spectacle and show everybody about this cool new resource available for New Hampshire. I think that's everything about this website that I wanted to touch on. Blog and news would just be any sort of announcements or, you know, things that we want to post regarding transportation. And then About Us would provide information on the mobility managers, the state coordinating council, which, oh wow, they added that. Look at that. And then the regional coordinating councils, and then mobility management itself.
Ben, would they have like under resources like AHA's volunteer driver map or their driver initiative?
I would assume that they would, or maybe even our VDP map as well. That would make sense for them to have that under resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously resources is the lowest on the priority, given that it's all Latin text right now. But what's that?
Well, I've noticed, what is it with this Latin stuff where it's like the popular way that.
It's just placeholder.
I know,
text.
but it's just.
It's always the same,
it's
it's always the same
I'm sorry,
sequence.
I went off talking, I was always wondering why I was there.
Yeah, sometimes when you hit download PDF, it just gives you a PDF that just says words for like 7 lines, just to test out downloads PDFs. But it's just fun little back end quirks before this thing is polished in public.
The few places where it talks about the rides time, the time rides are available.
Mhm.
So for instance, like one of them said 7 to 4:30. I get it that it starts at 7, so you could probably figure out you could get a ride at 7.
Yeah,
But the 4:30 one, does that mean that you could get a ride at 4:30 and whenever it's done, or the ride has to be finished by 4:30? Like you have to be wherever you're going when 4:30 comes. don't
that's
know.
actually a good question. I guess it would depend on the service, and I think that's something that's worth doubling down on in here, making it clear of,
Well, last ride leave time.
yeah, some services give a final pickup time, sort of like
Okay, that would be
NPA.
That's
Yeah.
good wording. I wish that would make it easier for me to know specifically, this is the last time you could get picked up.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I guess it varies a lot more with the volunteer driver program, since it just kind of depends on a volunteer's availability.
The specific person.
Yeah, whereas like a demand response service like Acts and Elder Services here, it's a structured system. So that would definitely be worth doubling down on.
Even there, to clarify that you could get a ride at 5 as the last pickup time. That in those words, as opposed to, I don't know by looking at this.
Yeah, it's definitely something to expand on here for sure. It's good input. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
It's very interesting.
Yep.
So any other business? Seeing none. Motion to adjourn. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll hopefully get our system improved in the next month, so stay tuned.
Thank you.
Sir?
Good question you got about the.
I know exactly, but it just makes, I feel like money was wasted, like, planning is great, but